I welcome you to Uganda, and I thank you for having selected Uganda for this meeting. You are most welcome. This is a topic which is very good to discuss when we are all gathered here. And in the case of Uganda, because we are talking about socio-economic transformation and job creation, although sometimes the matter is not thoroughly dealt with, because sometimes they talk about sustainable development. And I'm a bit suspicious of that description. The agricultural products and the minerals, copper, were being exported as raw materials. In Francais, I hear matière première. That's what I hear them saying, matière première. So these products were being exported as raw materials. This meant that on the average, getting about 10% of the value of the product. Because when you export a raw material, you get only about 10% of the value of that product. If you take coffee, when you export a kilogram of coffee, you will get about $2.5 of unprocessed coffee. Somebody who is cleverer than you takes the coffee, roasts it, grinds it, packs it, and he gets $40 when you got 2.5. You, the African, you got 2.5 for your coffee. Somebody who is cleverer than you got $40. And all the jobs, because remember, all those are jobs. You are talking of jobs, jobs. These are the jobs. The job of roasting the coffee is exported. The one who roasts the coffee is not your daughter. The job of grinding, the job of packaging, all these are exported. There used to be a Paris club called for donors. I don't know why they were not calling Africans. Because Africans have been the major donors for the others. They have been donating money, because in a kilo of coffee, you donate almost $30. You donate to the outsiders. And you also donate jobs. So you are the big donors here, you people. When you export a raw material and somebody goes and makes more money out of it and creates jobs for his children, when yours here have no jobs, you are the donor. You are donating money, you are donating jobs. That's what Africans have been doing. As of now, Agriculture is employing 3.6 million people. Industry is employing 1.4 million people. Services are employing 5 million people. And ICT is employing 46,000 people. We are just beginning, but you can see the jobs can be created. The hotels, tourism, transport is employing a lot of people. In order for the 4 sectors to be fully developed so as to create wealth and jobs, they need low-cost transport, the railway and the lake transport. Part of the mistakes in Africa have been to neglect the railways. And this is what I told the World Bank when we met in Nairobi. How can you talk of private sector-led growth if you don't talk about lowering the costs of doing business? Now, some of the factors that bring costs to go up is transport of cargo. If you have got expensive cargo transport, how would the companies succeed? So, rail transport, lake transport, electricity, an educated and healthy workforce, stopping the export of raw materials, low cost of money for borrowing to do business, a big market of Africa and beyond. Now, those are the obstacles that you should really concentrate on. The belief in the politics of identity. This is the big curse in Africa. People who believe in the politics of identity. Tribe, religion. For us, we say this is wrong. You should look at the politics of interests. It is all mentioned here. Because of that, you find many countries cannot build state institutions. They cannot build pillars of state. How would you build an army if you believe in tribalism? Will you have an army for every tribe? If you don't believe in Uganda, how would you have a Uganda army? Now, if you don't have an army, what happens? You can't maintain peace. That's why people have got to go to the United Nations to come and defend them. Can you imagine? UN troops in Africa, what are they doing? Defending you. Why can't you defend yourself? With the Europeans recently, we passed a law which was discouraging homosexuality here. Then Mr. Biden removed us from the AGOA list. He chased us. That was one. Number two, the World Bank stopped giving us loans. But our economy grew by 6%. We are not bothered with all that. What is crucial for me of all this, apart from our own mistakes, the next most important thing is regional integration. If we avoid internal mistakes and we are clear about the regional integration, the regional market, there is nothing, all that things that happen outside will not concern us. I thought I should mention that one also. The economy of Uganda has been growing very fast with or without external support. But with the external support, now they have come back. They say we are good people.
I want to congratulate President Museveni and his team for not only this conference, but for the ongoing work, SDGs, which is such an important path to development, not only for Uganda and for Africa, but for the whole world. And I congratulate him very much for that. And I think all of us at the United Nations also recognize that Africa is at the center now of the ideas, of the initiatives, and of the actions that are going to make sure that the rescue of the SDGs, in fact, is something that happens. Of course, we have to look beyond 2030. We have to know that things don't stop in 2030, but we need to know that the progress that we are making now, sometimes as difficult as it is, and I will talk about that in a moment, is something that we need to continue to work on together. First, let's have a reality check on the headwinds that we are facing. The climate crisis, which is ongoing and which will be ongoing for the rest of my lifetime and for the lifetime of every single person in this room. And let me say, as the president of ECOSOC, climate change is not a theory. Climate change is not an ideology. Climate change is science. Climate change is fact. And it is dealing with these facts and this science that we must come together in helping countries to adapt to the changes that are already taking place and in dealing with the great emissions that continue to come from industrialized countries that continue to contribute to the climate crisis. I have to say, as a representative of Canada, that the arbitrary cuts that have been made in development assistance by a number of countries, as well as the entirely unnecessary and painful tariff attacks, which are having potentially such a disastrous effect on global growth and economic justice. We have to face these challenges together. And as I say, as a representative from Canada, I can tell you directly, we know something about tariff attacks these days. Our territorial integrity as a country has been questioned. Our nationhood has been questioned. And we know, as do all of you, the right to sovereignty is built into the Charter of the United Nations, and the right to economic and social justice and to freer trade is built into our Charter and everything that we stand for and have been fighting for together. I want to say to you, many Africans here, I say to all of you, your struggle is not only your struggle. The struggle you are facing is a struggle faced by everyone in the world. And above all, in difficult times, we must reaffirm the value of one simple thing, and that is solidarity. The solidarity we must show with each other, and the solidarity we have to show in our work, in everything that we do.
Excellencies, Africa stands at a pivotal moment, not only of challenge, but of immense opportunity. With just 5 years remaining to achieve the 2030 Agenda, and the second decade of Agenda 2063 now underway, we must confront the hard truths and match them with bold and courageous solutions. Yes, progress has not been fast enough. Structural inequalities persist. Informal employment remains widespread, disproportionately affecting women, our young people, and rural communities. The annual financing gap to achieve the SDGs stands at a staggering $200 billion. Foreign direct investment to Africa declined in 2024 by 1.9%, falling to $53 billion. And the burden of debt is suffocating. In 2023, 25 African countries spent more on external debt servicing than on health and education combined. This is unacceptable. Over 60% of countries are now in or at a higher risk of debt distress. In too many countries, more than half of government revenue goes to debt repayments, undermining vital investments in people, resilience, jobs, and growth. the Abuja Declaration remains a distant ambition. Half of African countries spend less than 6% of national budgets on health, and the high cost of digital access, especially in rural areas, continues to exclude millions of our people, deepening gender and geographic divides. But these figures do not define us. Africa is not standing still. We are standing up. Despite global headwinds, our continent accounted for 9 of the world's fastest growing economies in 2024. Progress is against HIV and AIDS is encouraging, with nearly 24 countries recording significant declines in new infections.
It is a privilege to address this 11th session of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, convened under the compelling theme, Driving Job Creation and Economic Growth through Sustainable, Inclusive, Science, and Evidence-Based Solutions for the 2030 Agenda and the African Union Agenda 2063. I wish to begin by extending my heartfelt gratitude to the government and people of Uganda for their gracious hospitality in hosting us and for their dedication to Africa's sustainable development journey. We know that Uganda is leading by example on sustainable development goals implementation. In particular, I wish to convey my deep appreciation to His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni for his support to the Economic Commission for Africa's mandate and his commitment to the broader development priorities of Africa. My profound gratitude also goes to Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, and all distinguished participants for your leadership in advancing Africa's transformation agenda. I also wish to acknowledge the steadfast collaboration of our partners, especially the African Union Commission, the Africa Development Bank, and the United Nations system, whose collective efforts have brought us here today. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, as we speak, structural vulnerabilities, including the lingering effects of COVID-19, climate shocks, conflicts, and geopolitical tensions, as well as mounting debt burdens, continue to stifle Africa's progress. For instance, the continent is grappling with a substantial debt burden amounting to 64.3% of GDP, which significantly limits fiscal space for critical investments in education, health, infrastructure, and other essential sectors. Furthermore, our average GDP growth since 2019 has hovered around 3%, which is far below the 7% needed to achieve the SDG 8 on work and economic growth. In light of the current global developments, it's now clear that development aid can no longer be considered a reliable or sustainable solution, and the traditional financing models are increasingly misaligned with Africa's development aspirations. At this critical moment for Africa, we have no choice but to look inward and take bold, transformative actions anchored in evidence, innovation, and inclusivity, including investing in the capacity of our people and institutions to turn things around. With just 5 years to 2030, the data is sobering. Out of 144 measurable SDG targets, only 10 are on track, while 106 are progressing too slowly, with 28 regressing. In fact, at the current rate, SDG 5 on gender equality will take decades to be achieved, and this risks undermining women's contribution to social and economic progress.
Where we are discussing the Sustainable Development Goals and also looking at Agenda 2063, where we are discussing the Africa we want. The government of Uganda and the Economic Commission for Africa, in collaboration with the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank, the organizations of the United Nations system, and other stakeholders are hosting this 11th session of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. So we are discussing the transformation of Africa with a focus on the 17 SDGs. Let me just remind the audience, as I invite the first speaker, that when you look at the map of Africa, the way it is shaped as a question mark, with Madagascar as a dot. In other words, the continent is asking us questions, we as leaders of the continent, that how are you going to transform the continent and improve the quality of life of the people? That's the question put to us by the way the African continent is shaped, which looks like a question mark. And with that, let me take the opportunity to invite the Honorable Minister of the Economy and Finance of the Republic of Mauritania, who is also the chair of the outgoing bureau, Your Excellency Sid Ahmad Oudbo, to come and give us your opening statement. Your Excellency.
It is an honor and a privilege for me to stand before you to welcome you to Uganda for the 11th Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. Your Excellencies, Uganda is truly a privilege to host this esteemed gathering of leaders and experts from across Africa and beyond, united by a common purpose to accelerate progress towards the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Africa's Agenda .
The President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, who is also here as the chairperson of SADC. Also recognize former heads of state who have presided over the theme for this year, you would be all fair with it by now, is driving job creation and AU's Agenda 2063 and the second phase of the
Republic of Uganda, Vice Honorable Robin Anamanja, the Honorable Ministers, and we would like to request you
Uganda, in partnership with the United Nations, established an SDG coordination framework, guided by a clear implementation roadmap aligned with the SDGs, the National Development Plan in 2024, and to 144 in 2025, produced 3 and transformation. Uganda has over the health infrastructure and establishing strong 2024 neonatal mortality rates in the world, as 49.5% of its citizens are under. Launched initiatives such as the Presidential Initiative on Domestic and Multilateral Partnerships by Uganda have demonstrated strong leadership in advancing African integration through active implementation of the African Union